So we can start our session off as usual.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy and vigor. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. This is a peace prayer for teacher and students, because in studying these subjects, then there has to be an openness from all parties in all directions. There has to be a generosity of spirit from the teacher's part, and there has to be a generosity to receive and listen and absorb, not taking out in any way critical thinking, because that's part of it. So this talk this evening might be a little short, because somehow I'm not feeling 100%. But I thought a good subject would be ocean's total view. So what do we mean by that? I always think, and I also gave a poem of some people who are running something like a lodging house. And in a lodging house, many responsibilities are there. You have to make sure that every guest room is completely spotless, habitable, that the linen is changed for new guests, that repairs may need to be made, and that food is served on time and is of good quality. But the chances are those people who are running such an establishment will be oblivious to the wonderful scene in front. And the scene in front is why people have come and lodged with them. They've come for a holiday, but the owners don't see that holiday. All they see is busyness, busy being busy, that's it. No time to sit quietly and view the scene in front. Let's assume that the scene in front is something like a vast ocean, and that all the conditions for that scene are ideal so that people come from all over the world to view this beautiful spot, to swim in the sea, and simply to enjoy the vastness of the ocean and the feel of golden sands or white sands. In Africa we have white sands. And just absorb the atmosphere nicely and breathe in the fresh air. They might stay a week or two, but during that time, in order to make their stay comfortable, all the owners will have to run around. It's no holiday for them. Two types of people in the same environment, in the same place, with the same opportunity for viewing, yet two different approaches, two different points of view. But then there's a third point of view. It seems a funny thing to say, but the third point of view will be, what is the ocean's point of view looking back at us? Now, there are many things in today's world that now are mechanized. Many, many jobs requiring intensive labor have been nicely replaced. Not so long ago, maybe 150 years ago or so, people worked in cotton mills in unhygienic conditions. And there were small children who were working there as well. Life was grinding. And while there were levels of mechanization, it's nothing like the levels of mechanization that are there today in factories. Never mind about factories. In a simple kitchen, there is a machine that has the capacity to liquidize things, chop things into small pieces, and then the number of things can be beaten and churned and so on with the same machine, multi-purpose machine like that. And we can remove the lever of that machine and fit a special glass container into the hole in the top, and we can pour the items in as before, and we can apply a switch. See, all these various functions are reliant on one particular flowing kind of energy. And we might say that this general current or creative force that stands behind is manifest, if you like, in all these different ways, all these different units and applications for different functions. So is there a lesson that we can learn from this? Is there something in the human personality that acts like a kind of general current or creative force and overflowing into all the various devices, hands, head, ours, human personality, mind, the way of thinking, and operating in this way? Is there a lesson that we can catch from this mechanization? Is there something we can know more about what we call our human personality? Is there a possibility that a current standing behind us can transform the invisible into all the material effects that we see, not just in the human body, but in what we call the mind and also the environment? Is there such a thing like that? Just as in a manufacturing plant, you will take all the different raw materials coming in, you'll make a flow of energy through the machines, and these machines will manufacture something, and there'll be an end product at the end, maybe a little waste as well. And the idea is to minimize the waste, to maximize the end products. But there's a constant flow with many, many different machines buzzing here and there, eliminating the necessity for laborious labor. So yes, I think there's something inside man that is like that. It's called thought. And that thought comprises two things: meaning and repetition. These two faculties are there. But what we mean by meaning is something that can be expressed and also hidden. There's a twofold character to it. And very often we play an element of diplomacy and politics with people because our own advantage is primary. There was a great discussion at the moment around some potential crisis in Europe that has been going on for a while. And if you see the historical background to it, you'll see, I wonder why people can't have a little common sense. So we can be talking nicely on the one side and plotting against our so-called friend on the other, a kind of duplicity, and completely oblivious to the effects on us when this happens. Of course, the situation is Ukraine and Russia, where there are complex reasons and complex components to this game, because it's a game of rattling sabers, and it's a game much deeper than just a superficial, one country is here, another country is there, and one country is threatening another country is worried. It's far, far more complex than that, as most things are. So we can be talking diplomacy on the one side and plotting on the other. And this duplicity was found in the Second World War, where the Japanese ambassador to Washington was talking nicely and talking about peace and this and that and the other. And while he was talking, Pearl Harbor was being bombed. This, of course, is an Oriental strategy, legitimate Oriental strategy, which goes by the name of Maya. We are interpreted as diverting somebody's attention. Divert somebody's attention here and put something underneath there. But all this is done with the non-realization of the deeper levels and layers of the human personality. So this is the meaning, but what about the repetition? When all of these things are repeated in the expressed way and in the hidden way, whatever it is, the one affecting the other, in the conscious mind, these all accumulate by repetition into what we call a habit level. Now, there's a great misunderstanding, a mistake about the habit level. We think that our memory is something that we can consciously select and bring out when we choose. We ignore the fact that it has a pulling power deep within the deepest levels of the psyche, and that pulls and attracts things toward us. Because at a certain level, nature has no boundaries or borders. At a certain level, beyond the conscious mind and conscious awareness, beyond the local situation, all of these thoughts, all of these plans, all of these intentions, all of these resolves, all of these purposes, all of them find their way. Just like the current is there and finds its way through different machinery and finds its materialism, so also this unconscious pulling power draws in things and transforms things immediately that act as a matching materialization of what we think at the very deepest level. Because once it's at the deepest level, it has now become a habit, and we cannot directly change it. The only thing we can change is the conscious effort on the surface. That's the only thing. We have no direct access to the unconscious mind. So we can dismiss it lightly and say, oh, this subconscious is the way we put it. This subconscious is below and in sense inferior. This subconscious area is just an unseen, unknown deposit box. And when we want to recall something, we dip into the files and bring it out. No, it is actually the whole substratum of our environment. It is the architect, if you will, of the whole of the environment, starting off with what? Starting off with our own mind, starting off with our own body. And so if we are able to change that and make it a delightful pursuit, if we are to change all these intentions, purposes, and so on in a more positive way, positive means more joyful. And then the question that came up when I began, what if we view things from the ocean's point of view, from the current's point of view? What then? Then we would see that everything is very different. We would see this world as a delightful play of plays itself, of waves itself. We would see this world as an expression, as a manifestation of something very profound that finds its evidence in the observable universe, finds its evidence in us. There's every reason why we are thinking beings, because that entity is expressing itself. You'll recall knowledge or consciousness is expressing itself. It's flowing as a kind of current, creative current, and coming out as a capacity to think. What we do with that thought determines our whole future and determines our whole environment. We don't have to panic about it, but we have to take definite disciplinary measures, structured measures. We have to construct our conscious life very carefully in such a way that doesn't feed the habitual components in a negative way in the unconscious mind, that feed in the positive areas. What are the positive areas? Let's say we have a memory of delightful scene. Let's say we go on pilgrimage. This is the value of pilgrimages. This is the value of churches and temples. This is the value of recalling wonderful, wonderful scenes in nature. All of us have experienced maybe the ocean, the sand. All of us have experienced the flow of water. All of us have experienced at least the air, the sunshine, All of us have experienced plants growing. All of us have experienced the beauty in life, which is inherently there. And all of us have seen the harmonious, pure energy in its operation that we call the universe. All of us have witnessed the tremendous beauty which is there, the shining element. That shining, all things shine, say the Upanishads. And all of us have witnessed these elements of high-minded love, noble love, exhibiting itself as an unbounded spirit of generosity and service. All of us have seen joy and bliss in our life. These are not accidental freaks of nature. These are traced back to the fundamental expressive source of that one entity, that one current, that one flow, that decides to flow here and there, through and in and as everything, and that we have the capacity to harness and direct. So when we engage in these repetitions, repeated habits, repeated words, repeated phrases, repeated thoughts, we have to change the type of repetitions so they become useful, they become joyful, they become positive. Then the habit level becomes the same. Habitual assemblage of materials for our future is what we are assembling by this process. And it manifests as soon as our assimilative system resembles the human body. It's the body that reflects this immediately. Don't think that it is not unaffected. Don't think that you can get away with hating your neighbor, or plotting against your neighbor, or having some uncharitable thought against somebody or some system. And so we have to look behind the flow and see how infinite it is, something like the ocean, and then add, just for the fun of it, another dimension. What does it look like from the ocean's point of view? It is all manifesting. It is all blessing. It is all infinite. It is all so extensive, we have no understanding of its boundaries or borders. So we must learn to look upon all deep-seated desires that we have, aims and purposes, as the main current that drives different types of our machinery. Not just our own machinery, called body and mind, but drives the effects of it, where nature takes over and makes no distinctions. It doesn't moralize, this is good, this is bad. It simply takes it and employs it, puts it into its own ocean. That is another ocean that we call nature. And so the first course of the first idea of learning to take these deep desires, aims, and purposes and drive the machinery in a positive way. It consists of all our conscious movements. It consists of all our talks, even our inward talks, all of our discussions, all of our actions, our thoughts, our words, and our deeds. But the second works outside the strictly conscious field. It is our environment, and it molds the entire environment. That is to register accurately the experiences implied in every purpose or every intention. It takes it, it materializes it. Beyond a very limited range, nature does not keep any distinctions. It doesn't make any distinction between our precious individuality or sense of individuality, our own sense of self, and others. None such distinctions are made. And we can try to oppress our neighbors if we like, because we're strong and they're weak. That's the normal situation. But from nature's standpoint, the very idea of injuring constitutes a certain act, just an action, just a movement, and it must have its due effect. That is the natural law. And although we might be picturing others as the proper recipients of the injury, I'm cursing him, a thunderbolt goes out from your head, or I bless him, a dove goes out from your head. That's the conventional way we look at it. It's not like that at all, because there is only one existence that nature recognizes. And so we might picture that, but nature herself starts her response then and there by administering the relevant blow directly on that area which is nearest to us, your own body. Your own body, your own house, your own property, your own individual circumstances. There's no point in blaming anybody else. Your own thinking did it. And unfortunately, we don't look in that direction, and we don't cultivate the sensitiveness necessary to detect such subtle movements, but they are there. So the experience of striking and being struck has to be taken as a single movement. The experience of striking and the experience of being struck has to be taken as a single unit, not as separate individual things. We have to take them as manifestation that is spread out in different forms and levels according to not our convenience, but nature's convenience. So we know her resources are practically endless. See, a storm may strike us and blow off our house or our roof, or a flood may destroy our crops. But these blows would be hard indeed, returning to us in a few hours the total force of injury which we stepped up in ourselves by sustained aims spread over maybe some 20, 30, 40 years. Or we may get a fall that may lame us for life, or a stomach disease that maybe we can't easily heal. No thought is ever wasted, absolutely. And before it acts, if at all, on objects and people around us in the manner we imagine, it's bound to act with all its directness, our own mental apparatus, our internal instrument called our antahkarana, and then, of course, our physical limbs. So this is what we call samsara. Samsara, the environment that is around us. And it means our wrong outlook, which takes the distinctions that is based on our physical bodies as ultimately real. And that is where we make a mistake. So the first movement in spiritual practice is viveka, discernment, sorting it all out, not taking this unreal for the real. That is, not taking this impermanent for what is actually permanent and lasting. In taking this reality as we find it, we make convenient arrangements for exploiting others or doing harm for others in thought, word, and deed. Don't think that just a thought will be wasted for what appears to be always, of course, personal gain. This happens on the individual basis. This happens on the national basis. This happens on the international basis. This has happened in history, and this is likely to go on as well. But the source of all our difficulties is this sense of individuation, individuality that ignores the effects of these movements in this ocean. And so this samsara, of course, which we call nature, this environment, has often been compared to an ocean. And there are critics who always tell us that the very concept is only fit for cowards. They ask, why should anyone be afraid of life? They take a heroic attitude, because a hero should be able to face any difficulties and also conquer them, given the right formula and the right attitude. Not run away from them, not preach a philosophy of running and fleeing. No. And probably, of course, the study of history as a tale of military adventures, conquests, and general aggressiveness makes the critics also believe that facing and progress must involve some sensational demonstrations. It's not difficult to see that wherever wise people take this concept or introduce this figure of speech of the ocean, the samudra, wherever they put it is followed up by the concept of a reliable boat or a work of a divine helmsman that can take us across this ocean of life. If you're diligent in your spiritual life, you can pick up many, many examples of this. There's one taken as an excellent prayer from the Chandi. O goddess, it says, O Durga, Durga means a fortress, you are retentive power. You are the perfectly unaffected boat for crossing the difficult sea of samsara. So that is there. Durga si Durga bhava sagara nar asanga. Oh, so if we turn to the meditation prescribed for starting our study of the Bhagavad Gita, there's always the Gita Dhyanam ahead of it, then we can find the mention also of the boatman there. The Kurukshetra war, around which the Mahabharata is centered and around which the Bhagavad Gita itself is centered, is compared to a dangerous river with its deadly current, its dangerous whirlpool, its billows, which the Pandavas were able to cross only because of the skill that the boatman Krishna, the one that carries us across, has when he acts as a divine helmsman. If we were to have any prayer, it might be that, O divine helmsman, please carry me across this ocean of life, full of dangers, full of sharks, full of threats. But I'm safe in your boat, and I am safe and trusting in your capacity to row this boat. This comes out also in Buddhist concepts, the concepts of Tathagata, the concepts of the one that enables the crossing of the oceans as well. But we have other concepts and other figures of speech, if you will, to explain. The samsara can also be spoken of as fire. And we are shown of many ways to put it out. Sometimes it's also equated to difficulties of traveling on land or up a mountain or something of that nature. And then, of course, we come across the example of the Bhagavad Gita and the Katha Upanishad of the chariot with its horses and the reins to hold them in check, and the expert to act as the driver. And many poets, of course, have also described the pursuit of perfection as a kind of upward flight, a kind of flight to nobler heights. And so, on that view, samsara refers to the resistance encountered by the soul, which corresponds to the flying bird. And to overcome all of these kinds of things, it's asked to develop wings of virtue, which are variously described in many different kinds of texts. Whatever may be our figure of speech that is used to indicate samsara, we invariably get sufficient explanation about the proper methods of facing it and mastering it. There's a wealth of information about how to do that. And it's really not the sign of wisdom to take only the first part of a figure of speech and not enact the second part, not see what its significance is, not to devote ourselves to the presentation or getting around the problem as well as the presentation of it and leaving out the solution. In business life, there's a phrase, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. The wonderful song that Swami Vivekananda first sang in front of Sri Ramakrishna, a wonderful translation, "Oh, my mind, see, why do you roam here and there? You can imagine somebody going on a pilgrim journey up a mountain, and there are many, many robbers on the way. Anger and greed and lust and jealousy, all of these are robbers. But there are good rest houses also on the way that we can use and keep our mind on the higher goal, where our home is." So it really is the duty of us in spiritual life as fairly intelligent people to see the total picture of an honest one, to show it to others. But this concept of an ocean is used in another sense. Not samsara alone, not nature, but it's also said that the supreme truth or reality too, because of its vastness, because of its boundlessness, can also be compared to an ocean. And it is from this point of view that we can stand and beam and see what happens to all our problems and difficulties, and see all the other things as a manifestation of this one ocean, this one supreme truth. It's interesting, of course, that Vishnu, who is the protector of the worlds, is said to be residing in the ocean itself. And we can see how he advises the deities in the mythological stories to secure the cooperation of their enemies, the Asuras, to help churn the ocean until immortal nectar comes out to cure them all of their difficulties, infirmities, and problems in life. And we can see what Sri Shankaracharya has to say while offering salutations to his own great teacher. He says, "I prostrate at the feet of the most adored among the adorable, who rescued for the benefit of all this nectar hardly obtainable even by the deities from the innermost depths of the ocean of the Vedas by churning it," using the same expression, "with the rod of his illumined reason." We can now see the significance of this story of the churning of the cosmic ocean. He's telling this, of course, in the Mandukya Karika commentary that ends in a salutation. But he also has something to say in his masterpiece, The Crest Jewel of Discrimination, Viveka Chudamani. And there he says that, and this passage, of course, is highly suggestive and speaks of the samsara as an ocean infested by sharks, an ocean of incessant births. Brahman itself has been pictured, therefore, as an ocean in terms of such phrases as Brahman Buddhi. To remove the idea of its remoteness, there's the direct experience of non-duality, of course, for those who are prepared to undergo the necessary disciplines that are laid down. And when it comes to the sage, that is Shankaracharya, it is said to feel, and I quote, "In me," he says in the Viveka Chudamani, "the ocean of infinite bliss, the waves of the universe are created and destroyed by the playing of the wind of Maya. Indeed, in the ocean of Brahman, filled with the nectar of absolute bliss, what is there to be shunned and what accepted? What is other than oneself and what is different?" Now, with all of these things, it is worthy of meditation. Let's go back to it. In me, he says, that is, in everybody who assumes a set of individuality or individual characteristics, the human personality. That means in me, that is subtly untraced, normally speaking. But when you go deeper enough, you'll find it. What will you find? The ocean of infinite bliss. The waves of the universe are created and destroyed. He's not saying, as other non-dualists might say, that ocean of infinite bliss is all there is and there's nothing else. No. What he's saying is that the waves of the universe are created and destroyed by the playing of the wind of Maya. It is this fragmenta, this Maya. What is Maya? Maya is a statement of fact. It comprises three evolutionary forces that tend to be seen as fragmented through the mind as the universe. The cosmic mind, its creative function is to make the fragmentation, to have subtler, increasing gross waves in the creative process. But that cosmic mind is never deluded about it. It is only when it comes to our point of registration that the delusion comes, and that Maya seems to be something to get around. But we have to understand that it itself is a manifested expression, and we can have other terms for it. We can have a term such as infinite energy, or the harmonious play of pure energy that displays itself in so many different ways, fundamental waves that come out ultimately as all the glory of the universe, and the highest glory exhibited in the product of man. And then indeed in the ocean of Brahman, filled with the nectar of absolute bliss, what is there to be shunned and what accepted from that point of view? Looking at from the ocean's point of view, nothing. What is other than oneself? What is different? Nothing. When we come to that conclusion, we have truly viewed things from the position of the ocean. When we do that, we find we circumvent many so-called difficulties and problems in the life of our own personality. So with these two aspects, that is, on the one hand, understanding that every thought movement that comes out as meaning and repetition creates a pulling power, a suction in the unconscious area, and that draws in corresponding people, places, and events toward us. It crystallizes our world for us. How to get over it? Look at it from the ocean's point of view. Shift your perspective and learn to play. So 3 characters are there in my description. One character is there for a holiday. One character knows the nature and playful nature as it is, and beauty and goodness of the ocean itself. But the other one is oblivious to it and sees the world as a series of difficulties, problems, activities. Activities that will, no doubt, be seen to produce the effect of money and power and pleasure. The other person is spending the money, and then the possibility of looking at it from the ocean's point of view. So with these small ideas in mind, this is the subject, the ocean. The ocean is a totality.
Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.